Goblinstein and Monster in a nutshell. Goblinstein will be the next champion coming to Clash Royale. It will be available in Goblin's Queen's Scrapyard starting from October 7th. For 5 elixir, you get a Goblin Frankenstein and the monster with him. Yes, Frankenstein is the scientist, not the monster. L+ ratio to Brawl Stars for getting that wrong. Now first, let's look at the monster, so goodbye Goblinstein. The monster has 2700 HP, which is really high. To put that into perspective, that's way more HP than Mighty Miner, and it also targets buildings, so it's more like a giant than a knight. It has lower sight range, so as you can see here, it bypasses this building placement when a normal giant would end up going after it. Now come back Goblinstein, it's your turn, so goodbye monster, we'll see you again very soon. The scientist is actually a ranged troop that shoots some shockwave thingy. Despite his small size, he is actually pretty beefy as he can survive poison, which most of the small ranged cards usually fail to do. His regular attack stuns on every single hit exactly like an E-Wiz attack, which is why his damage is so bad he can only one-shot skeletons. Okay Mr. Monster Guy, you can return now, we actually need you. These two go together like peanut butter and jelly, and they really rely on each other. If you press the ability, for 2 elixir you will get an electric bolt that starts from the scientist and ends at the monster's head. And no, I will not accept it if you say the bolt starts from the monster head and comes down to the scientist, because obviously the remote control is with the scientist himself. When the monster dies, he drops a... wait, hold on. Name of ball that attracts electricity. Plasma globe. Alright. The plasma globe works the same as the monster, so realistically you don't need the monster to activate your ability. But if the scientist dies, the ability button disappears, since technically the scientist is the champion. And if he dies mid-ability, it gets completely wasted, so make sure to look after your little nerd. I need you to listen to this very carefully. The lightning bolt does over 1000 damage and can kill an archer queen if she gets hit with all of its duration. I say all of its duration because as you can see here, the damage applies every 0.5 seconds. Lucky for us, the damage is reduced on crown towers, so you won't really take a full 1000 damage if that monster gets on your tower. I think it's worth mentioning the ability itself doesn't stun, aka it doesn't reset Sparky when it kinda looks like it should, and that it can also damage invisible stuff, so you can pop a bush if you want to. And for some reason it doesn't cause the E-Giant to reflect damage back to the monster, so I'm not actually sure why it behaves this way. Now aside from killing the scientist, you can't cancel this ability. For example, a freeze won't stop it at all. Even a Goblin Cage will still allow you to use your ability as long as the monster is the one that got kidnapped, not the scientist. I was curious if rage speeding the damage ticks on the ability was a thing, so I played a rage to see if you can get more damage, since you know it's a fixed 5-second ability with a hit speed. Raging the scientist didn't work, and I also tried raging the monster as well, but seems like there's no luck in this either, so I guess it's over. Or is it? What about the big brain rage on both of them? Maybe it would actually speed the lightning up since both parties are faster? Nah. Didn't work, very sad. A tornado would allow you to mess around with the path of the electric bolt. This could help lower the value by putting the monster and the scientist closer to each other, which would make the bolt shorter. Speaking of which, the best value from the ability can be earned when the monster is as far as possible from the scientist, because it would allow the ability to cover more space. The basic method of doing this is by using Goblinstein on defense, where the scientist would waste time attacking, say, a miner, and the monster will be walking and ignoring everything. But a more advanced way exists by splitting them into 2 different lanes, and you can do that on both sides. The reason this works is because, as you can see here, the scientist's position gets mirrored based on which side of the arena you place it in. If you want to get the most value out of a diagonal lightning bolt, you would need to know what's the range on it to predict where the damage will be applied. On the card description it says 2 tiles, but to make sure we understand these 2 tiles very clearly, I placed a bunch of dart goblins in this way, as it would make it easier to notice which one of them is getting hit and which one of them isn't. I know it doesn't show the damage directly, dev build stuff, but you can see from the lightning effects on them. Now this dart goblin seems to be safe because he is 3 tiles away from the middle of the lightning. What's interesting is that the scientist and the monster themselves can shock troops 2 tiles around them. Here's a dart goblin 3 tiles away from the monster, which proves to be safe from the electricity. After all this analyzing, we can determine that the range will look something like this and will obviously move as the bolt itself moves, but it's basically just a big rectangle. Oh yeah, and I mentioned that the monster itself shocks troops, and since it's 1k damage, I can see this ability being something you almost always use, kinda like an Archer Queen ability, cause it gets too much value. Like if they use any melee troop to take down your monster, by just a button press you can do a ton of damage to it and prevent a counter push. And even if your monster dies, the ability can still continue dealing damage afterwards, so I feel like there is no risk at all doing that. Defensively, it's also very cracked, because tell me, why does it fully counter a graveyard on its own with literally 0 damage? In a regular graveyard push, the monster can be used for tanking, and the scientist will be taking the skeletons down slowly with his attack and his ability radius. His ability can even wreck a goblin barrel, which is 7 elixir for 3. But to be honest, I've seen pros use Little Prince against barrel, so I'd imagine Goblinstein is not a bad idea. He can also counter Goblin Drill, which I know plenty of cards can, but Evolved Drill is where things get cool because you can counter it without any damage by just making sure your scientist is directly behind the tower. It's a bit hard to pull off with the ability, but after the drill nerf it will be easier, I promise you that. Dude, I even like this interaction with lava pushes, as you can have your scientist in the back defending and the monster will keep walking forward, distracting all the troops they have behind it. The moment the lava hound dies, you can activate the ability to kill the lava pups and everything behind it. And my favorite part is using it against Expo, because the 1000 damage is 2/3 of the Expo HP and they basically can't even block it because the monster goes for buildings and has a range of 2. It's actually really so funny. The ability recharge speed is relatively fast, so if you used it on defense, by the time the slow ass monster gets through the bridge, it would have likely be fully recharged again or really close to it. You would then have a big ice golem that can shock things around him on command, and since it follows buildings, I can see it replacing Mighty Miner or Monk in hog decks, as it can destroy buildings very effectively. For King Tower activations, the monster is very heavy and cannot be pulled by a tornado. If you were too stubborn and just wanted to waste elixir on 2 tornadoes, I will not tell you what to do, but just make sure to pull him in a specific angle, because if you just pull him with no thought, the tower might be in range of the lightning bolt, which would make you take unnecessary tower damage. Now for the useful king activations, you can use a fisherman to get the monster on the king tower. It even works on Cannoneer without them using the ability, because he got a ton of HP. A small warning though, it seems like the electricity deals full damage on king could be a bug, but keep that in mind. Now before ending, I just want to slowly show off the new arena, since I realized only using it for recording clips might leave a few corners completely unseen. Wait, I can't believe I almost forgot this, but since the scientist is the champion, this should mean that if he dies alone and I cycle back to another one, theoretically I should have 2 monsters at once. Yes, it worked. Now I can have double ability. Oh my god, come on, this is so lame. I cannot believe this. The canon official way to spell he-he-he-ha was revealed yesterday, and it's with an I. So like hi-hi-hi-ha. I'm truly speechless, my dudes.